Well, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce my colleague and friend, Professor Naganawa, uh, otherwise known to several of us as Nori. Nori is a professor at the Slavic and Eurasian Research Center at Hokkaido University in Sapporo, Japan. And this year, he is a fellow at the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton. But unfortunately, for those of us who would love to get together with him personally, he had to remain in Japan. And he'll be speaking to us from snowy Sapporo. Let me just say a word about Nori's home base. Like Bruce, I had the wonderful chance to be a fellow at the Slavic and Eurasian Research Center at Hokkaido. I think it's fair to say that this is the best research center on Russia and Greater Russia in all of Asia. My time at the center made a great impact on my perspectives and research. At the time, the name of the center was just Slavic Research Center. But thanks to the research of faculty members like Nori, it has since then put Eurasian into its name. Professor Naganawa's research and his publications extend over a very wide field of interest: the politics of Russian Empire, Islam in Russia, Tatars, especially the Tatars of the Volga region, the Islamic knowledge, the Muslim public sphere, Muslim culture, nationalism and religion in the context of reform and revolution, and Russia's connections to the Middle East. Professor Naganawa is the editor of 4 major volumes on Eurasian themes, and his monograph, Islamic Russia, Empire, Religion, and the Public Sphere, won the prize of the Mishima Kaun Memorial Award for the distinguished contribution to the study of Asian history in 2019. But unfortunately, for those of us who don't read Japanese, it's not yet translated. But readers of English and Russian can access Nori's many articles in Slavic Review, Ab Imperia Critica, and other volumes. So I have with me at home one of the volumes published by the Hokkaido Slavic Research Center with an article by Nori in it here, and I just thought I'd show it to you all. There's a great title, Imperiology, From Empirical Knowledge to Discussing the Russian Empire. So I want to close with just a few words about what I see as outstanding qualities of Nori's approach to his work. First, he is a super cosmopolitan scholar who works in Russian, in Tatar written in multiple scripts. He works in Ottoman Turkish, English, and he reads other languages as well. The second point, while Nori is always perfectly familiar with scholarship on Russia and Islam produced all over the world, he does not bother to get into disputes over questions such as, was Russia a colonial empire or not? Were Muslims excluded or included as imperial subjects? Instead, he focuses on the-ground politics situated in particular localities and teases out the attitudes of people in their own time, a time when empire was normal. And he emphasizes the radical differences in the situations of different Muslim populations within the empire, the Volga area versus the Central Asia or the Caucasus. A third observation, Nori's studies break apart the conventional groups that historians love to talk about: Muslims, Russians, Tatars. He always highlights the disagreements and conflicts within each group, so to speak. And he shows that Tatars did not agree with each other, Islamic activists did not agree with each other about questions of religious practice and education. Local and provincial administrators did not agree with each other either. And when you read Nori's works, people come alive with all their struggles, special interests, and tractable or intractable problems. So I want to close with one example from an area of interest I share with Nori. That's the history of the city and province of Kazan with its big Tatar Muslim population. When I started to work in Kazan, in today's Tatarstan, I was fascinated to discover that the official calendar book, kind of a yellow pages for Kazan province in the early 20th century, 1910, 1915, that yearbook begins each year with calendars of holidays, not just Russian Orthodox holidays, but in this order, Orthodoxy, then Roman Catholic, Evangelical Lutheran, Christian, Muslim, and Jewish holidays. What does this all mean? Well, from reading Nori's wonderful article, Holidays in Kazan, I learned what an enormous political struggle lay behind all these lists of holidays. Russian merchants, for example, wanted everyone to have the same day off, Christian ones, so that Muslims would not be able to shop on Sundays. Many Tatar merchants argued that religious tolerance meant that they should keep their own Friday holidays, but keep their stores open on Sundays. But not all Muslims shared the same perspective. Muslim shop assistants wanted to go over to common Christian holidays so that they would be able to meet with their fellow Russian trade unionists to have on the same day off. So it's just this kind of human detail that reveals the special, specific interests and conflicts of imperial politics on the ground that makes Nori's history of the Russian Empire so fascinating, convincing, and important to understanding the history of empires. So now let's let Professor Naganawa speak for himself from Japan on his subject for today, which is making an anti-imperialist empire, revolutionary Russia and the Muslim world. Nori.
Thanks so much, Jane. Do you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Jane, for a very generous introduction. And I would like to thank also Professor Bruce Grant for giving me a wonderful opportunity to make a presentation at the Jordan Center for the Advanced Study of Russia. And my gratitude also goes to Sasha Spitalnik for the pleasant arrangement. And I'm a little bit overwhelmed. I see the 92 people present here, and it's very unusual for me. And so thanks so much for joining us. So let me share a slide first of all. Do you see the slide? Do you see the slide clearly? Okay, thank you. Today, I would like to talk about my ongoing book project. It is a biography of one Tatar revolutionary and Soviet diplomat, Karim Abdraufovich Khakimov. Sorry, the slide doesn't work, so I will do again. So this is the guy. So this is the guy about whom I'll talk today. By using Khakimov's biography, I want to tell a transnational history of revolutionary Russia. Let me quickly start with the geography where Karim Khakimov's life story transpired. Sorry, this is a Japanese map, but I hope that you get a sense of places where Khakimov traveled. Born in Bashkiria, Khakimov entered the Bolshevik Party in Samara in 1918 and mainly operated among Orenburg Muslim communists, and he demonstrated his distinction in the Red Army. In 1920, he moved to Tashkent together with Red Army commander Mikhail Frunze and occupied a high position in the Communist Party of Turkestan. Here in Central Asia, when the Red Army stormed into the Emirate of Bukhara at the beginning of September 1920, Khakimov reached a high position in the Bukharan People's Soviet Republic. And actually in Bukhara, he got married at the height of his revolutionary career. Khakimov's diplomatic activities began in northern Iran, first as consul general in Mashhad, northern Iran, and then Rashid. And these are years of the final moment of the Gajal dynasty. From 1924, he led the Soviet mission in Jeddah on the Red Sea. And although even the specialists of the Middle East tend to forget, it was the Soviet Union that became the first country to recognize the polity later to be known as Saudi Arabia. From 1929 to 1932, he was both ambassador to Yemen and representatives of Soviet trading company involved in commerce and the Red Sea. In short, Khakimov's trajectory illuminates a seamless transition from Russia's civil war to the early Soviet involvement in the Muslim countries. The trajectory of the Karim Khakimov itself is really fascinating. But of course, this is not enough to justify the research agenda. In recent years, we have witnessed a significant changes in the historiography of the Russia's involvement in the Middle East, forcefully revising the existing British and French-dominated narrative of modern history of the Middle East. The salient feature in the Russia's uniqueness is the intimate linkage of imperial integration of the Muslim subjects and expansion to the Muslim neighbors. Alan Kane vividly depicts Russia from the 1840s to the 1920s as a builder of the trans-imperial Hajj infrastructure that contributed to making Islam more Mecca-centric than ever before. The special place of the Muslim East, both domestic and foreign, in the interwar Soviet state has attracted much attention. As Adib Khalid argues, the Soviet republics in Central Asia were similar to Afghanistan, Iran, and Turkey. All these countries were ruled by centralized governments wielding coercive power in modernizing Muslim society and in forging nation states. The Soviet republics in Central Asia took comparable measures and competed with these countries, particularly in terms of women's emancipation and the Latinization of Turkic languages. Samuel Hurst argues that Soviet-Turkish exchanges in particular worked well beyond a bilateral relationship to demonstrate a development model importing the content of European progress while shedding the forms of European domination. Meanwhile, as Masha Kirasirova forcefully demonstrates in her excellent dissertation, Moscow became a transnational hub where revolutionaries from the domestic and foreign East met. And I want to mention that Eileen Kane and Masha Kirasirova and Margaret Litvin now completing a fascinating, amazing source book titled Russia Arab Worlds: A Documentary History, which is expected to be published from the Oxford University Press next year. So now a dynamic change is going on around the study of Russia, Middle East entanglements. Alfred Reber once detected persistent factors in Russia's foreign policy: economic backwardness compared with Europe and the US, permeable and porous frontiers, multicultural state and society, and marginality from or vicinity to cultural areas of Europe and Asia. Following this lead, I argue that the Soviets deployed domestic Muslims such as Karim Khakimov as their interlocutors with the foreign East. The Soviets saw Russia and the East as victims of the Western capitalist exploitation and the British imperialism in particular. The Soviets believed that this shared humiliation could create a seamless political and economic zone opposing imperialism. Of course, I follow a so-called biographical term in recent history writing. I believe a biography is the most effective method revealing connections and contexts that nationally framed historiographies have left out. I focus on Karim Khakimov, a non-native Muslim intermediary between the Soviets and the Muslim locals. While historians have carefully examined the roles of indigenous collaborators in the empire building, I pinpoint the Tatars who already played a similar part in the Tsarist Central Asia. My central argument is that addressing the predicaments encountered by Karim Khakimov enables an assessment of elusiveness in the Soviets' projection of power upon the former empire's borderlands and beyond. We can hear Hakimov's voices directly testifying the difficulties the Soviet state faced in forging relationship with the Muslim peoples in Central Asia and the Middle East. My biography of Karim Khakimov hopefully also has implications to understand Russia's role in the Middle East today. Russia today seems to have no enemies in the Middle East, mediating conflicts over Syria and mediating good relations with both Iran and Saudi Arabia, without raising tensions between the two regional powers. Russian commentators usually see this situation as Russia's return to the region after the failed Soviet engagement during the Cold War. And actually, it is in this context that the name of Karim Khakimov is often mentioned as a forerunner of contemporary Russia's diplomacy in the Middle East. As I showed this before the seminar started, I showed the one video clip, which shows this kind of a new celebration of Karim Khakimov in the context of Russian return to the Middle East. And this video was created by the state TV company. And Russia's return is striking, as this happened against the backdrop of the collapse of Pax Americana that flourished since the Gulf War of 1991. Just 30 years ago, I was a junior high student and witnessed the Gulf War and the collapsing Soviet Union at the same moment. It was as if the whole world was crumbling in the eyes of the kids in the countryside. So that's why I decided to study Islam in Russia at the university. I'm really happy to come back to my own kids' question, like why Russia and the Middle East are changing at the same moment. And I hope that my biography of Karim Khakimov provides a crucial historical perspective that will help us understand Russia's challenges in the Middle East today. Now, let me explain the sources of my biography. So far, I worked at the Russian archives in Moscow, encompassing the archives of Communist Party, the Foreign Ministry, and the Red Army, as well as the Soviet Economy Archive. I also find equally significant materials from the Indian Office Records, British Library, London. The Indian Office Records are particularly useful in piecing together Hakimov's Iranian and Arabian stories by comparing and combining them with the Russian documents. In addition, I have to particularly emphasize the significance of the State Archive of the Republic of Bashkortostan in Ufa, where Hakimov's personal file, Lichna Dela, is preserved. It is interesting to note how this documentation took shape. As happened with many good people, Khakimov was shot in the Stalinist terror in 1938. After his rehabilitation, Lufti Zakievich Gajilov, Hakimov's brother-in-law, conducted his archival research in Moscow, Orenburg, Tashkent, and Bukhara. So you see, this is a younger sister of Khakimov, Magnia, and her husband was Lufti Gajilov. And Gajilov's notebooks comprise the core of the Hakimov's documentation in Ufa. Based on assembled documents, Gajilov published a biography of Karim Khakimov in 1966, which is written in Bashkir. As a matter of fact, I found this Bashkir language biography at the Columbia University Library in 2009. I immediately thought that I should reread it in the light of new historiography and sources, and this is how everything started. Now, for the rest of my talk, I selected 3 snapshots from Karim Khakimov's life story. First, reconquest of Central Asia. Second, net for Iran. The third, the Red Sea becomes red. By telling these 3 episodes, I want to emphasize a significant connectivity between these Muslim regions and the Volga-Ural region, which I have studied in the past 2 decades. It seemed to me that the Bolsheviks, particularly in the 1920s, attached a special meaning to the Volga-Ural region as a bridgehead toward the broader Muslim world. So in my Khakimov project, I used the Volga-Ural region to bridge not only between the late imperial and early Soviet periods, but also between the local and the transnational. Now, let me begin with revolutionary Central Asia. Here, actually, Tatars were invaluable soldiers for the Red Army, fighting in the Muslim regions of the collapsed empire, because the Tatars had served in the Tsar's army on the universal basis, and they fought in the Great War. This is a remarkable difference from the Muslim population of Central Asia. And as you know, many of you know, the Muslims in Central Asia had been exempted from the draft. And I have an article published in Abu Imperio last year, which shows how this difference reproduced a sense of civilizing mission among the Tatar Red soldiers who came to Central Asia to regather the fractured empire. The most distinct military formation composed of Tatars was the first Volga Tatar Infantry Brigade. Karim Khakimov was one of the founding members. So please look at this map, how this infantry brigade traveled. First of all, it was formed in Kazan, and then they fought in Orenburg with Cossacks led by Ataman Dutov, and then they traveled through the Kazakh steppe, fighting with the Alash Orda, the Kazakh national government autonomous movement, and then moved to Tashkent to fight with Basmachi, anti-Soviet insurgents in the Fergan Valley. And finally, this brigade participated in the conquest of the Bukharan Emirate of Bukhara in September 1920. And you can see these pictures, and you see the ladies sitting alongside red soldiers, and these Tatar women were very important in the local context, because Tatar women kind of signified in the eyes of local women kind of a civilizing kind of figures, and Marianne Camp in her influential book, The New Women in Uzbekistan, also mentions this importance of the encounter, Uzbek women's encounter with the Tatar women, and pre-revolutionary Tatar feminism and the Soviet emancipation of the Muslim women in Uzbekistan. And archival documents and memoirs by the brigade veterans show that it seems like the brigade was quite welcomed in the Fergan Valley. On the pages of the newspaper of Communist Party of Turkestan, İştirakiyun, we can find numerous articles on the brigade activities in the Fergan Valley. I even discovered a poem praising the Tatar Brigade. So, you know, upon your arrival, the Fergana rubs its head on the ground. You saw flowers blossom for you at your every step. And especially the Tatar Brigade played a crucial role in integrating the surrendered Basmachi anti-Soviet insurgents into the Red Army. As you see in these pictures, among the Red soldiers, you see the different kind of men are sitting alongside, and these are chiefs of the Basmachi, the heads of the anti-Soviet insurgents, and actually they surrendered to the Soviet side, and the Tatar Brigade tried to integrate these surrendered Basmachi into the Red Army. From February 1920, Khakimov operated in Tashkent, keeping close contact with the Tatar Brigade deployed in the Fergan Valley. At the same time, this picture shows Khakimov's closeness to the Soviet leader sent by Moscow to Tashkent. And this is Khakimov. This is Khakimov, and we can see the commander of the Turkestan front, Mikhail Frunze, and Valerian Kuibyshev here. And next to Frunze, this is a guy named Yusuf Ibragimov. He was a commander. He was the commander of a Tatar Brigade. So these facts shows how significant Tatars were for the Soviet leadership in Tashkent. And the Soviet leadership actually used Karim Khakimov to impose Moscow's will upon the native Muslim communists. In July 1920, when a coup of the Communist Party of Turkestan happened, Khakimov entered the Central Committee of the Turkestan Party, headed by the Nazir Churakurov, who was Kazakh from the Fergan Valley. I take notice of this encounter because Khakimov and Churakurov will meet in Jeddah on the Red Sea in the late 1920s. Khakimov was the first Soviet plenipotentiary to the Hijaz, and the Churakurov was actually the second. And so this also suggests a connection between the Central Asian Revolution and the early Soviet diplomacy in the Middle East. At the beginning of September 1920, the Red Army conquered the Bukhara Emirate. As a matter of fact, one of the first troops that stormed into the old city was the two regiments of the Volga Tatar Infantry Brigade, with Tatar women mobilized as nurses and medical staff. And former participants of the Tatar Brigade occupied distinct positions in the Soviet Republic of Bukhara. Actually, the new republic's war minister was Yusuf Ibragimov, the former commander of the Tatar Brigade. And Karim Khakimov himself became a secretary of the Central Committee of the Bukharan Communist Party, and later plenipotentiary of Soviet Russia to Bukhara. So during the first half year after the Red Army conquest, there was a harsh power struggle between the Tatar incomers and the native Bukhara elites. As a result, in April 1921, Yusuf Ibrahimov was dismissed from the post of the war minister. His Bukharan colleagues denounced Ibrahimov as making Russification policy, the lack of competence, bourgeois propensity, and plundering the Bukharan Amir's property. Ibrahimov, in his turn, just showed his gratitude for this criticism, promising that he would never repeat in the future. As plenipotentiary of Soviet Russia to Bukhara, Karim Khakimov analyzed the difficulties that Tatar intermediaries confronted. Quote, Muslim agents have more influence upon local mass, something that Russian agents cannot achieve due to their unfamiliarity of language and particularities of the Muslim custom. That is why the Bukharan government is less apprehensive of the Russian agents' influence, but takes heed of the Muslim agents, particularly Tatars, the most civilized revolutionary elements among the Muslims. In order to remove undesirable revolutionary elements, mainly Tatars, there were all kinds of cook and bull stories circulated, such as rumors about coup against the Bukharan government, unquote. This quotation is a perfect example testifying difficulties that Tatars as Soviet intermediaries faced in forging relationship with the Muslim native elites in Central Asia. Scholars studying the revolution and civil war in Central Asia have not addressed the relationship between these Tatar incomers and the native political elites. Adib Khalid's influential book, of course, Making Uzbekistan, is no exception either. I would like to here contend that the role of the Tatars should be clarified in its own right. Now let's move on to Iran. Here I have to admit that Iran is the least known pages of Karim Khakimov's life story. So I have still many things to be done. Karim Khakimov arrived in Mashhad on December 1st, 1921. The military attaché at the British consulate commented about this Bolshevik consul general. Quote, he appears to be a disciple of Lenin, that is to favor the attraction of foreign capital to aid in the rehabilitation of Russia. It is quite possible that the institution of the consul general in Khorasan will operate strongly for the re-establishment of Russian influence in northern Persia, particularly through the medium of trade, unquote. This British measure captured Soviet Russia's transition to the new economic policy and its impact on northern Iran. As is well known, the Soviets concluded treaties of friendship and recognition with Iran, Afghanistan, and Turkey around the 10th Communist Party Congress in March 1921, which decided to the transition to the NEP. In September that year, the People's Commissariat of Foreign Affairs sent out an instruction to the Soviet consuls in Iran. This instruction told Soviet consuls to support urban bourgeoisie so that Iran create a unified, independent nation state. Karim Khakimov was also compelled to negotiate with the urban bourgeoisie in Mashhad so as to compete with the British economic influence. And this is an irony because Khakimov was so fiercely denouncing and fighting with the Bukharan political elites as bourgeois democratic. And Khakimov's economic activities were actually very much linked to his home region, that is the Volga region. one of Hakimov's efforts in bringing Khorasan, northeastern Iran, back to Russia's economic sphere was to send foodstuffs to the Volga region. As you know, in 1921 and 1922, the people in the Volga region were starving due to the famine. So Khakimov tried to send foodstuff to the Soviet Russia and to his home region, and which was his first mission as a Soviet consul general in Mashhad. Another effort Khakimov made for Russia's restoration of economic influence in Iran was to connect the Iranian merchants to the Nizhny Novgorod fair. And this poster itself clearly suggests how the Soviets perceive the East and how the Soviets want to show themselves before the East. As you see, the Eastern merchants are carrying goods by camels, in sharp contrast to modern bridge, train, and shipment. Leonid Borisovich Krasin, People's Commissariat of Foreign Trade, insisted that Nizhny Novgorod fair concentrate on transactions with the East, avoiding the European involvement for fear of Krasin wanted to avoid the European involvement for fear of an unnecessary competition. In addition, the Soviet government applied the Asian tariff to goods proceeding to the Nizhny Novgorod. So of course there was a European tariff also. And actually, Asian tariff was one tenth of the European tariff. So this which signified the Soviet promotion of trade with the East, and particularly with Iran. Yet the Soviet side was dissatisfied with the Iranian traders' preference to transfer easily realizable dried foodstuff, such as dried fruits and rice and nuts, and particularly the merchants in the northern Iran wanted to export dried fruit, rice and nuts, but of course the Soviets wants to raw materials for indispensable to its industrialization, particularly for the textile industry in the Soviet Russia. So this was a kind of a disagreement between the Soviets and the Iranian merchants. And the Iranian side, meanwhile, was disappointed by the Soviets' incapability to meet their needs. And they were not happy with the price of products that became much higher than that of British products upon being imported to Iran. Here we can see a dilemma between the state monopoly of trade and the cultivation of friendship through market economy. Still, commerce trading was a very important leverage to fill an ideological gap between the socialist state and the monarchic states of Hijaz and the Yemen, under the guise of anti-imperial alliance. Karim Khakimov arrived in Jeddah in August 1924. British consul general in Jeddah, Reader William Bullard, noted that Khakimov was very young for his post, but clever and enthusiastic communist. Bullard reported in May 1925, quote, Khakimov tried to enlist Ibn Saud in the Soviet Union scheme for the great revolt of the East against the imperialistic and colonizing powers, unquote. It is most likely that in this British consul's mind, there was analogy between Karim Khakimov and Lawrence of Arabia, an organizer of the Great Revolt against the Ottoman Empire. I will come back to this British consul, Reader William Bullard, at the end of my talk. The first Soviet commercial enterprise where Khakimov was involved was the Hajj. About the Hajj, of course, we have Ivan Kane's book, so I will not repeat so much. The Soviets inherited and developed the Tsarist route of the Hajj, transporting pilgrims from the Western China, Afghanistan, and Iran through the Soviet territory. So I just want to emphasize that here, the Volga region was very important for the Soviets to cultivate a good relationship with the Saudis. In June 1926, Ibn Saud assembled the Muslim Congress in Mecca to establish himself as the new protector of Mecca and Medina. In response to Ibn Saud's invitation, the Soviet government dispatched its delegation, which was actually the second largest after British India. The Soviet delegation was headed by the Reza Eddin Fakhreddin. This person, chair. He was chair of the Central Muslim Board, and this Central Muslim Board was an inheritor of the Tsarist Muslim administration established in Ufa by Catherine II. In fact, Reza Eddin Fakhreddin was elected as one of two vice chairmen of the Mecca Congress. After returning home, Reza Eddin Fakhreddin reported to the OGPU, the security organ, that the Soviet delegates had enjoyed the extraordinary respect and sympathy, not only because of religious brotherhood, but thanks to the fact that, quote, they were citizens of the Soviet Union, which sincerely hopes for the liberation of the East and the Muslim world and demonstrates this by its own policy, unquote. The OGPU assessed the delegation's mission as wholly satisfactory. The second Soviet commercial enterprise where Khakimov was involved was exporting kerosene, benzene, flour, sugar, matches, timber, and manufactured goods. And actually, the Nazir Trakurov, the former colleague in Tashkent, was also involved in this commercial enterprise in the Red Sea and negotiating with the Saudis. Ibn Saud and Imam Yahya, king of Yemen, cautiously steered their diplomacy in the middle of great power commercial rivalry. Ibn Saud approached the Soviets for a counterweight, but behaved carefully so as not to irritate the British too much. Because his country neighbored the British mandatory territories and its economy substantially depended on merchants from British India. Meanwhile, Imam Yahya, king of Yemen, counted on Italian assistance in armament to obtain a territory disputed with the Saudis. He regarded the Soviets' material help as a helpful supplement to Italy's aid. Karim Khakimov worked in Yemen from 1929 to 1931 as an ambassador and a local representative of the Soviet trading company. And the Soviet business in Yemen was relatively successful in comparison with the one in the Hijaz. In the early 1930s, the Soviet kerosene covered 70% of Yemen's consumption. But what irritated Khakimov most was the fact that, quote, the center too weakly reacted to the local needs, too weakly guided local operation, unquote. The Soviets' mismanagement also betrayed the expectations of native collaborators. Of course, the native Yemeni merchants tactfully weighed the Soviets against the British. Many merchants were connected to Aden, more to Aden under the British administration. But some of the merchants approached the port of Hodeida, a base of Soviet commercial enterprise in the Red Sea. Khakimov promised to provide one Ali ibn Wazir with 50,000 boxes of kerosene at Port Hodeida. But Khakimov later found that the headquarters of the Soviet company met only half. This frustrated Ali ibn Wazir and forced him to trade with the British oil company Shell. Khakimov complained to the Moscow that, quote, "We at one stroke will destroy what has been built by long, laborious work," unquote. Khakimov came back to Moscow and welcomed Saudi Prince Faisal in Moscow in 1932. And again, in 1935, Khakimov was dispatched as plenipotentiary to Saudi Arabia. As a matter of fact, during his first tenure in Jeddah in 1920s, he lost his very young son. So his wife did not want to go back to Hijaz. And Khakimov went there for the second term with his wife and 8-year-old daughter left in Moscow. It seems like Khakimov was very lonely, tired, and drunk too much. His British colleague reported that, quote, "His drunkenness and general behavior were such as to warn off all but the most stupid," unquote. It does not mean that the Soviet and British diplomats were always involved in rivalry. British consul, Reader William Bullard, left diaries testifying his friendship with the Soviet representatives in Jeddah. In fact, Reader William Bullard is a very interesting diplomat. He worked twice in Jeddah, exactly the same periods as Khakimov's. In addition, Reader William Bullard spoke Russian and worked as consul general in Leningrad from 1930 to 1934. So he could communicate. He was able to communicate with the Soviet diplomats in the Hijaz in Russian. And Bullard even entertained the Soviet colleagues with Zakuski, Russian audible. Bullard often mentioned that Khakimov had a great sense of humor, and Khakimov was an amusing man. When Khakimov was recalled to Moscow in September 1937, Bullard seems to have sensed what fate awaits his Soviet colleagues. As Bullard was well aware of what was going on in the Soviet Union at that moment. As I said, he worked until 1934. So of course he knew the assassination and murder of Kirov in the same year. So he well informed of what was happening in the Soviet Union then. 3 months later, 3 months after the Khakimov's recall, Bullard wrote in his diary, quote, "I have had many arguments with Khakimov, and although he defends Marxism stoutly as a rule, I could give evidence which would ensure his being sent into exile if not shot. For instance, he has admitted to me that history cannot be explained by economics alone. Great men have affected it. But if the people at the top want to down him, they will find plenty of evidence somehow. But I shall be sorry if he is shot. I like him and respected him, unquote. So this is the end of the story. I'm very much looking forward to your feedback and suggestions on how to wrap up all these transnational connections and entanglements. And thank you very much. Thank you very much for your very kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Nori. I will follow in Sasha Spitalnik's earlier footsteps just by letting people know that both she and I will be monitoring the chat as well as the participant list, just to see for anyone who wants to pose a question to put up their hands, or on the participant list, or just if you just put in the chat, put in your name, then that registers a question. The chat's a little more solid as a way of either of us being able to find you, and then Sasha and I can toggle back and forth about unmuting people. Again, I just want to remind, this is a great example, not only of the collection of people, everyone on the screen themselves, but it would have been very, as we hoped, to have Nori with us in person. It would have been very respectable to have 30 people here. We have triple that with us on the screen, even though it's well after midnight in Japan. So it's great to see everyone. I'd like to start with Masha Kirasirova across the Atlantic. And Masha, we'll try and get you unmuted, please.
Hi, thank you so much, Nori. This was wonderful. And everyone else, hi. I have two quick questions about trade. I was curious, you mentioned that first when Khakimov was in Mashhad, that he was able to somehow direct trade directly to the Volga region. I'm wondering how he was able to do that. I mean, as from a position in a consular office, how he had any say where the foodstuffs were actually going. And another question related to trade was about the shipment of kerosene. I need to talk to you more about this because I'm writing something about kerosene in Iraq a little earlier, but I guess I'm curious in the period that you're talking about, because my impression was that a lot of that trade was facilitated by the steamships that were carrying Hajj pilgrims. And that was a big part of the expansion of the transportation infrastructure. But it seems like in the period that you're talking about, that may or may not no longer be the case. So if that is not the case anymore, that they're not carrying pilgrims, is there enough trade to actually support the shipping relationship, or is something else going on? Thank you.
You mean kerosene trading in the Red Sea in the 1930s?
Yeah, when you were saying that, he was responsible for, as representative of a trading company, that what they were trading were kerosene matches and things like that. And I guess in earlier sources, that trade seems to be piggybacking on the steamship lines, which seem to be expanding just because Soviet consulates are expanding in places like, for example, to Basra, like the Basra line is opened in 1901, but that has to do with support for pilgrimage. And then, it seems like people are thinking, okay, if we have these steamship lines, maybe we can undercut, British trade, but that doesn't seem to be the kind of driving economic force anymore. So, I'm just curious about what it is in this later period.
Okay, yeah. Should I answer the question to question, or?
Please,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Masha, joining us. Of course, I very much appreciate your expertise, and yeah, we will talk more. And when it comes to the question of the Mashhad and how Khakimov organized the trade in Mashhad, actually in Mashhad in early in early 1920s operated several organizations from ones from the, of course, the functionaries from the People's Commissariat for Foreign Trade, and this agency also divided into two. Actually, operated from one department operated from Tehran, and another one operated from Ashgabat, from actually from Central Asia. And in Russia, there was a structure of Central Soyuz. Central Soyuz, it's a cooperative organization which had operated during the Great War to procure foodstuff in the Khorasan region to Central Asia and to Russia. So there were structures. Trading structures still remained, and of course after the Civil War and turmoil in the Khorasan region, of course this organization worked very badly, but still Khakimov could rely on this structure to organize and to ship the foodstuff through, of course, through Caspian Sea to the Volga River, I suppose, according to British documents, judged by the British documents. And when it comes to kerosene, of course, I have to do more the research and how the the production. Of course, presumably this kerosene was exported from Batumi or and So it seems to me that this traffic of kerosene increasing toward the end of 1920s, and as I said that the export the Soviet kerosene dominated the Yemen market. It is very surprising. It's quite amazing to me. So So this is of course my task to how the Soviet could penetrate into the Red Sea, and I heard alongside the oil, there was kind of a more Soviet involvement in the textile export here also, and it seems like there was a rivalry, textile from the Soviet Union, from the British India, and actually from Japan, and Japanese textile also penetrated in the 1930s into the Red Sea. So this is. So I have to work. So I have to work on the Japanese archives too. How this competition worked in the 1930s. So still I have to go. Yeah, more. Thank you.
We could keep on going, but we have 3 questions so far. First up is Sujat Mirza, followed by Safia Levine, followed by Naira Sahakyan. And I don't know, I can read them out, but Sujat, if Sasha is quick to the unmuting, you could possibly pose your question directly. Let's see if we can do that.
I've unmuted you, Sujat. There we go. Great.
Okay, so let me look at the question. Where was it? I was like, 1 second. So my question was, how is Russia using the previous knowledge of diplomacy in its present day balancing acts and entanglements in the Middle East? And how do we see similar patterns or mistakes in the present day?
Mm, mm. Well, yeah. To answer this question, perhaps it is necessary to study the Soviet the Soviet policy after the war. How this policy making is transmitted to the post-Soviet period. Perhaps in that sense, Masha knows much better than me, and as I said, as I said in my talk, this what is the challenge? What is the challenges to the today's Russia and the Middle East? I think that this it seems to me that it's quite similar to that of 1930s and 20s and 30s that I'm now studying, and it seems like it seems like a kind of a I pay attention to a more kind of a language rhetoric of ideology or behind policies, and of course the in the 1920s and 30s Soviets used the rhetoric of anti-imperialism and so on, and the emancipation of the East. And today it seems to me that the kind of Russia tries to criticize the kind of double standard of the U.S. and the kind of and the violence under the name of democracy and liberty and so on, and in so doing, the Russians seems to play well, but on the other hand, if we look at the Saudi Arabia, Saudis quite consciously weighs Russians against the Americans. Of course, the Saudis alliance with the U.S. is a long history, but particularly in 2000, or in the early 2000s, the Saudis try to balance between the Russia and the U.S. and using Russia as a kind of counterbalance. So in this, if we see this situation, the Russia also kind of is entangled with this very tactful play done by the local actors. I'm Saudis and other players in the Middle East.
All right, we have 3 more questions coming down the pike. Next up is Safia Levine, who again, has also posed a question directly in the chat, but if we are quick to unmute, I can ask her to unmute there. Safia, you could pose your question directly.
Okay. Thank you, Professor, for today and for taking my question. I was wondering if Brother Karim, if he was a religious Muslim, since he, was a Muslim himself and traveled and met other Muslims and throughout the Middle East. Thank you.
You mean the Khakimov was religious or pious or not, right?
Yeah, did he practice Islam, as opposed to just being born into the religion?
Well, yeah, it's a difficult question, and it's very difficult to identify his kind of religious life, but he could use his religiosity for the very practical very practical purposes. And of course, the when he was appointed to Jeddah, and the first thing he did was, of course, the Umrah, the small pilgrimage to minor pilgrimage to Mecca. So and by doing so, he tried to contact with the Ibn Saud, who of course not at that time fighting with the Meccan Sharif. So I think that the he could use this kind of his own religiosity for the political purpose. When it comes to the Central Asian story, of course he himself manifests himself as a kind of a staunch kind of a communist, but of course he tried to he knew that the in order to gain procure trust from the locals, the Soviets have to respect their local customs, and this is what and he was actually a recruiter and the organizer of the Red Army troops from the native Muslim population. And of course, as I said, that the native population had not been drafted in to the Tsarist army. So it was his challenge to how to recruit and how to organize these local Muslims into a Red Army soldiers. And in this operation, he really respected this. He tried to respect the religiosity, for example, the foods. Provides halal foods and so on, and so I think that he had a sensitivity to that, and actually he before the revolution he studied at the madrasa. He studied madrasa, so of course he had a basic knowledge of the Islam to communicate with the pious people.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And indeed, that's always the thorniest question for many reasons. Next up is Naira Sahakyan, coming to us from Yerevan.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
Nice. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Nori, for this great talk. My question relates to that Meccan Congress. While I was studying Dagestan, it's the same period, they were also discussing this Congress, but they were discussing it together with the Cairo Congress. And all of these discussions were within these anti-imperialist discussions, quite Soviet rhetoric, but basing in Islam mainly, generally. So my question is, does Khakimov somehow mention this event as well? And what was caliphate for him? How he deals with that?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I would like to congratulate you on the finishing your thesis. I'm very much looking forward to your doctor's.
Thank you.
Yeah, and yes, so I know that I saw the content of chapters, table of chapters of your dissertation, and I noticed that you're also interested in this Cairo Mecca Congress, and actually the relationship of the attitude, Khakimov's attitude to the Congress is not found, has not been found so far in the documents. indirect evidence. Actually, one of the Soviet delegates thanked Khakimov for the assistance on the spot during the conference, and so I don't have still any concrete documents of the which prove the Hakimov's attitude toward the caliphate, but during at that time is the middle of 1920s. It's really a kind of a very interesting period in the Muslim world in general. In Iran, Reza Khan also became a Shah. I mean, the Pahlavi dynasty began, and the Saudi also established his own state, and of course in relation to the Cairo and Mecca Congress, there was a Khilafat movement arising in the colonial British India. So in that sense, a Soviet journal, for example, Novi Vostok, the New East, kind of Soviet Orientological kind of journal, also featured all these events in the Muslim world. This Cairo conference and the Mecca Congress in contrast to Cairo conference. Cairo conference was was under the British influence, so the Soviets definitely have to support the Ibn Saud initiative to establish himself as a new protector of Mecca, Medina, and so I think that these Soviet representatives see all these disputes around the caliphate through the lens of anti-imperialism and a kind of a national liberation movement, and so I do not see this kind of more kind of religious kind of type of disputes in this in the documents I'm looking. In that aspect, in that religious aspect, perhaps you know much better than I, and I'm very much looking forward to your thesis.
Thank you for that. We have next up is David Binns, and he should be able to join us in a moment. David, if you'd like to pose your question directly.
You should be able to unmute, David. I've just asked you to, if you can see that on your screen.
Okay, if we, yes, indeed. If we're, David's not unmuting, then I will just say that I can read out from the chat that David asked to what extent there remains a popular cultural political memory of these actions of forces associated with revolutionary Russia. And if so, in what ways are these events interpreted and evaluated a century later? About the pre-revolutionary Russian events. Popular memory.
Cultural memory.
Well, just whether there's a popular memory today of the actions of the pre-revolutionary forces and how people interpret that memory 100 years later.
Well, it seems like in Russia, the Russian Revolution was not so widely celebrated in the anniversary, but it seems like as for the Khakimov story, it seems like people are just using this Khakimov as a forerunner of Soviet diplomacy. So this is the kind of bright pages of the kind of Soviet history. So perhaps this kind of a revolutionary period is more linked to this Soviet achievements, perhaps Soviet nostalgia, and the kind of a superpower nostalgia. So it seems like the revolutionary Russia is not kind of a topic of a kind of a hot dispute among the historians and the public, I think.
Yeah. I will pose a question myself if I can. The only thing, with apologies, not to make this about me, I have to go teach in 10 minutes. So if I disappear from the screen, it's not for a lack of enthusiasm, but I could give two questions, and you should answer one of them, whichever is easier. You mentioned, of course, that he died in 1938, and one can imagine all the reasons why he would have been shot. But I just wondered, since we're all on the screen, and you ended on this portentous moment with the quote from Bullard, if it's relevant how he died and the reasons that were given for how he died. If it's not, and it's a story that is just a tragic one and we can guess, then that's fine. If you want to speak, the second question would be if you want to speak at all to the strategies or the struggles that you've had in making decisions about how to form this biography, the pros and cons of different genres. I could think of lots of things about that. And without being greedy, therefore, so as not to be greedy, I want to invite Jane. I know she has a question as well. Jane, why don't you pose your question, and then we'll use the time remaining for Nori to pick and choose whatever he would like to say.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Bruce. So Nori, I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the particular situation of Tatars in this intermediary of empire position that they occupied. And you mentioned that your protagonist and others, Tatars, have a sense of their cultural superiority to other Muslims in the empire and in the early Bolshevik period as well, that they had a mission to civilize. So I wondered if you could just say a word about whether you see a kinds of continuities in this privileged position of Tatars as imperial intermediaries among Muslims before and after 1917, or maybe even later. And also, are there continuities with these tensions among Muslim groups over Tatars' so-called privileged status, or also their, one you could say, Orientalist ideas?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much. And first, I will take Bruce's questions and the why he was shot, and actually he was denounced as a spy, as many people were denounced at that time, and of course, it is diplomacy is and spying is really a kind of blurred boundary, I think. But it seems like Soviet Union itself is really obsessed by the kind of outsiders invasion at that time from the Germany, from Japan, and of course many Muslim intellectuals were denounced as the Japanese spies, and so I think that this is the context, and of course the against the in the historiography shows that the Soviet Union had to acted against the Nazi Germany by allying by aligning themselves with the British. So so the Soviets began to abandon its own anti-British policy in Asia and the Middle East. So so in that context, the not only Jeddah but also in other localities, the Soviet consulate were shut down. So and when it comes to the change question, it's of course this will be the first chapter of my book. I think I will deal with the this long history of Tatar intermediaries in the Russian Empire. Oh, and of course Daniel Ross' recent book, Tatar Empire, also shed light on this aspect of how Tatars worked as intermediaries in expanding the Russia's empire, and then how Tatars turn into enemies in the eyes of Russians, in particularly at the end of the Tsarist regime. So so of course they're following this lead. I would like to move on into the early Soviet periods. So this continuity and rupture is a really core of my interest. And of course we can see a lot of continuity, but of course there are different people are playing. Of course in Tsarist period, of course the nobles, the merchants, and the nobles and merchants, and of course the scholars played this kind of intermediaries role. But in the early Soviet period, of course, the people like Karim Khakimov from a very lower kind of from a social layer, from the laborers and peasants. And actually, I'm now very much interested in how these peasants, simple peasants and laborers, revolutionized, and how they. I think it sounds like a very old Soviet type of history, but it seems like we should study this kind of revolutionary aspects of these. Why these Tatars became revolutionaries, and I'm very much inspired by the book of Lilian Riga, the Bolsheviks, how the Russian Empire shaped the Bolsheviks, and I also inspired the books from the Middle Eastern studies, the like Ilham Huri, Makdisi, and the Huri Birbirian, Armenian, about the Armenian revolutionaries. And I think that the I think Tatar revolutionaries should be contextualized in this more global context. And on the other hand, continuity is visible among Russians. Russians continued to see Tatars as intermediaries. So Bolsheviks, yeah, of course, different people are acting during the revolution and after, but Bolsheviks continue to see the Tatars as their allies in the Muslim regions. So this continuity among Russian Bolsheviks is also very remarkable. And it is very interesting that the Frunze and Kuybyshev said that in Tashkent, when they worked together with Khakimov in Tashkent, they said that Khakimov является ушами и языком. That this means that the Khakimov is ears and tongue of ours in when we operate in Tashkent. So this also shows the extent to which they really trust the Tatars. so that's why we should study the Tatars in that period. And actually, I got a review review from a journal. I submitted an article about this Tatar intermediaries in Central Asia, and just today I got a positive review from a journal. So I tried to finish this article to so that you could read it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So Bruce had to step out to go to a class, but if we have any more questions, I'm happy to take them. It looks like that might have been our last set of questions though. So any last minute raised hands or questions in the chat? Oh, here we go. Question from Zainab Dursun. Zainab, I'll go ahead and unmute you if you'd like to ask your question aloud. Great. Please go ahead.
Okay,
Okay.
I can also share my video. I think you can see me now, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
sure. Yeah.
Okay. First, I really just want to say thank you for this fascinating presentation and the talk. It's really so useful for me as I'm studying Soviet emigres, Soviet Muslim emigres who are really making propaganda against Soviet Union and really try to create their own identity abroad, especially in Europe. So your research really make me to think about identity of Soviet Muslims within the Soviet Union again. For example, when you tell the story of Khakimov, you depict a picture in which Khakimov is the ardent, very strong supporter of the communist regime, and he really tried to concrete the Muslim soldiers, and he was really one of the Soviet men, newly created Soviet men. But I would like to ask you, like, because you really know his story from the beginning. So the first thing is that what makes him really a strong supporter of the communist regime? I would like to ask that, is he a really idealized man? Is he really has certain ideological aims to change the Muslim lands, to really revolutionize them, or just he follow his own political path? Another question is relating to how he defines himself. So we know that he used different cards. He used Soviet identity, Muslim identity, Tatar identity, Turkic identity. And when he goes abroad to meet with other Muslim brothers, I would like to ask how he presents himself, or in his daily life, or in maybe you have connection to his family, like, you know, his grandson, granddaughter. I don't know, like those people who left after his assassination, how they define themselves as well, like what kind of legacy behind him. We know, like, we highlight his Tatar identity, Muslim identity, right? But I would like to ask how he was remembered right now, especially within his geography. And also, I would like to ask about Turkestan by himself, because he was one of the person who really led Red Army and went to Bukhara, you know, the reconquest of the Bukhara. And these are revolutionary people. I would like to ask how he was also perceived in different republics in Turkestan, how Muslims see him today, or I don't know, after his assassination. Thank you so much. I know it's a little bit, my question's a bit complicated, but I hope I clearly state. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. And you, Christian, helped me at some moments to what Professor Barbarank asked. Actually, so I said, as I said, that's he was originally from a peasant, a simple peasant and poor peasant, and his first experience of kind of a fighting against the upper class is kind of his countryside, where kind of land disputes are very harsh between Russians and the local Muslims, and that's why he thought that we should learn Russian. We should learn Russian in order to fight with Russians, in a legal manner, in a legal and a lawful manner. So you know, he was at first, from the outset, he was very fascinated with Russian culture. And this Russian culture helped him to associate with kind of a more urban cosmopolitan kind of a atmosphere, where of course there are of course workers, destituted kind of a people in the urban areas in the late imperial Russia. So this kind of a urban atmosphere in the late imperial Russia really shaped him as a kind of cosmopolitan socialist kind of mental person. So this and with this identity, he entered the revolutionary period, and his enemies were actually reformist-minded Muslim intellectuals. Of course, these Muslim reform-minded intellectuals were, of course, from the well-known scholars family and merchant family, and so the Khakimov was quite hostile to these former reformists, Muslim reformists. So that's why he could identify, he could ally himself with the Soviet side, I think. So that's why I said that we have to study more why Muslim peasants and simple workers became revolutionarized, taking into account this late imperial Russia's urban atmosphere, urban environment, and the global circulation of radical ideas. Mm-hmm. So I think this I think it's a very complicated process. So I think that why. So your question is also very crucial. Why he's supported? It's a very important question to why. What shaped him? What shaped him as a revolutionary? Yeah. And how he is remembered. Actually, he was at first rehabilitated as a Bashkir, because he was born in the today's territory of Bashkiria. So in the Soviet policy, of course, the Khakimov was categorized as Bashkir nationality. But in fact, as far as I see the documents, he never identified himself with Bashkir. He clearly said he was Tatar, and it is very interesting how he is remembered in Central Asia. No, never, because actually last October there was a conference commemorating the revolution in Central Asia, the Bukhara revolution, 100th year of Bukhara revolution, and I said that how Tatars were hated, in the revolution period, and the Central Asians also we are not so hate, but actually basically Tatars were alien after all, incomers, alien from the central Russia, and not native. So Central Asians love to talk about, in the Soviet period also, Central Asians love to talk about this brotherhood of the Russians and the native elites. Never with the Tatars come to Central Asia to make a revolution. It is stupid. So it was of course the embarrassment. So they never mentioned this Tatar involvement in the revolution in the Central Asia. So that's why this through the it is through the Tatars memoirs. It is through the Tatar memoirs that we could see, we could find the Tatar roles in the actual Tatars role in Central Asia. So this is what I'm doing now.